Samuel, this is going to be a pretty big turning point, and I think of the major turning points in like movies that you've seen and the kinds of things that kind of signal what a turning point is. And I think of like the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the movies that have come out, and they've always got that background music kind of going, and it's in a certain chordal structure for you musicians out there, and all of a sudden there's this key change. It's just a half step higher, and that always sparks, oh, something's going to change, Frodo or, Sam the Wise, something's going to happen, So sometimes that's the way they do it. And in Hebrew narrative, you see similar kinds of things. If you're reading the Hebrew, and it's like, certain signals that mark change, and something new is going to happen, and sometimes it's just, hey, this person, God calls them to go to a particular specific place. In this case, we see Samuel's going to Bethlehem, and let's see here. In verse 1, now the Lord said to Samuel, how long will you grieve over Saul, since I've rejected him from being king over Israel? It's kind of like, Elijah on the mountain, where he's just gotten done battling the 450 prophets to Baal, and he goes up to the mountain. He's exhausted. He's complaining, and the Lord meets with him and says, "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. There's more work to do." But he says, "Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have selected a king for myself among his sons." Now, I think there's some significance here to the idea of not just this particular family. And, I may be overstepping my bounds. I'll just throw out some ideas about this. I just wanted to develop it a little bit because I think it's kind of interesting. Can we say more about the idea of Bethlehem? Why Bethlehem, Of course, there's this family and the household of Jesse. But we know a lot about Bethlehem. And I call this my little, the power of the small country church. How about those small communities that are out there off the beaten track? They're not in the big city. They're out in the sticks. But guess what's going on in Bethlehem? Bethlehem has this history of seemingly to have a pretty well-established group of the faithful remnant. And you remember that we go all the way back to, this is where Rachel was died and was buried in Bethlehem, all the way back to Genesis 48. Not that it was necessarily good, but we see the roaming Levite from Judges chapter 17. He was coming from Bethlehem. And more significantly, Ruth and Naomi returned to Bethlehem. And Bethlehem becomes the focus of that whole narrative in the book of Ruth. Boaz is from Bethlehem. He shows up, and if we read Ruth with Judges, which we should, it's just a small little picture of what's going on behind the scenes. You've got faithful people having church, raising kids the right way, and good things are happening in these small little towns and these communities. And I think Bethlehem is probably one example of perhaps many small little towns around that region of the world where people were being faithful and continuing to be faithful. During that 400-year period of chaos, Bethlehem is behind the scenes and getting ready as a community to produce Israel's first true king, King David. Does that make sense a little bit? The population of Bethlehem, showing you how small of a town it is, during the time of Jesus was about 1,000 people. So going back a little bit earlier, probably during the time of Ruth, the population of Bethlehem, you've seen these towns on the population, and you drive through, you blink and you miss it, 300 to 600 perhaps, somewhere right around that range. So not a lot of people in Bethlehem. And out of this faithful remnant, we get the genealogy and we get to King David. But I think that as we'll see for King David, not only do we have the genealogy coming from Bethlehem, we have the spiritual preparation for King David coming out of Bethlehem. That doesn't come out of a vacuum. David wasn't born prepared and ready to be king. There was a lot happening that's not written down in the text out of Bethlehem. But there were people who were influencing this young boy, this young lad, not only his own household, the household of Jesse, but you've got grandmas praying, you've got neighbors, you've got community working. He's coming from a family who is getting him ready. He's learning things as he's growing up as a kid. And he leaps on the scene as a kid, which is pretty amazing, as we'll see. All right. So that's the application here. If you're called to be a pastor or serve in a community which is small, watch out. You could be producing the next David, That's where they come from, these world changers. So that's what we have here. Now, the selection of David in 1 Samuel 16, we see a reversal, in many ways, of 1 Samuel 8. Let's keep reading here in 1 Samuel 16. Let's have, is Hunter here? Hunter? He was here. Okay, how about Jared Jackson? Are you here? Where are you? Okay. Ryan? Man. All right, how about Jenny? Why don't you read for us, Jenny? I read verse 1. Why don't you pick up in verse 2 and we'll get into some of these details here.
Chapter 16, verse 2?
Yes, ma'am.
But Samuel said, "How can I go? When Saul hears of it, he will kill me." And the Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. You shall invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what you shall do. And you shall anoint for me the one whom I designate to you." So Samuel did what the Lord said and came to Bethlehem. And the elders of the city came trembling to meet him and said, "Do you come in peace?" He said, "In peace I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice." He also consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they entered, he looked at Eliab and thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed is before him." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For God sees not as man sees. For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart."
Yeah, so you see there's the kind of, we looked at that verse before. I just want to make sure it's the contrast. We had a chance to choose one of the tall brothers right there, but no, not the tallest one, right? He's looking at something different in the Lord. And let's read down through verse 11 and then I'll ask my question. Keep reading there. Thanks.
Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel, and he said, "The Lord has not chosen this one either." Then, next, Jesse made Shammah pass by, and he said, "The Lord has not chosen this one either." Thus Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. But Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen these." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Are these all the children?" And he said, "There remains yet the youngest, and behold, he is tending the sheep." Then Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and bring him, for we will not sit down until he comes here." All
right, so David ends up being not only the youngest, but the shortest. But the most prepared, as we'll see. One of the things that comes out of chapter 16 is a repeated reference to how many times do we hear the Lord chooses, the Lord chooses, the Lord will choose, the Lord has chosen. Do you see that? We see it in verse 1, verse 3, verse 7, verse 8, verse 9, verse 10, and verse 12. All pretty emphatically, the Lord is choosing. It's the Lord's choice. And that's a huge contrast to what we saw back in 1 Samuel 8. So then that lines up, remember, Deuteronomy 17, 14 through 20. Moses prescribed the king, and what's number 1 on the list is who's going to choose the king. The Lord's going to choose the king. So we're getting off with this one on the right track. Now, verse 16, after his anointing, you see the activity of the Spirit in verse 13. The capital S, Spirit of the Lord comes mightily upon David and sticks around for a while. The Holy Spirit's going to be continually active through King David. And that's going to be in contrast to what we saw with Saul. The Lord's Spirit comes on for a short term, then departs and comes back and maybe departs again. But here we have this ongoing ministry of the Holy Spirit. Verse 14, the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, so we have the departing there. To take its place, an evil spirit from the Lord was allowed by the Lord to terrorize him. But then we see grace, verse 16. Let our Lord now command your servants who are before you, let them seek a man who is a skillful player on the harp. I say 12-string guitar. And it shall come about when the evil spirit is from God is on you, that he shall play the harp with his hand, and you will be well. So we see a lot of talents and skills and abilities coming through with King David. And, this marks him as a skilled musician. And as we'll see later in the semester, we'll look at Psalms. And David uses even this skill and ability as a primary means for packaging up and delivering theology for his kingdom. So every song that you read in the Psalms, not all are attributed to King David, but he's a pretty significant contributor to the hymnal of the day for the worshiping and believing church. And any time they sing those songs, those psalms, they're reminding themselves of theology and what it means to walk in covenant relationship. And those psalms, as you know, they're our favorites as well. We read them because they dive in really quickly into real life, don't they? They cut to the quick pretty quickly, and that's just indicative of a skillful songwriter and an inspired songwriter, and that's who King David is. All right, let's see. Let's move to the next. Here we go. So again, the problem of being tall was not going to be David's problem. And I think that's all I have to say about that. We have his ministry of verse 13 and 14 and being a songwriter. I think I've already covered this. Okay. So let's move to the next part here and get into really what authenticates King David. We've got this long-standing battle, which really gets started from the very beginning, this cosmic duel. We go all the way back to Genesis 3:15, right? The promised seed from the one of a seed of the woman, one from the seed of the woman who will come on the scene and deal with the opposition, the one who's opposing in the process of bruising. Well, let's look at it really quick. He will be bruised in this Genesis 3:15. You're all turning your pages digitally. So this battle, he shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. So there's the Genesis 3:15 promised seed. So this battle's been going on, and what we looked at in, if you remember from the fall, what I wanted to say was about this idea of the Nephilim. From the earliest chapters in Genesis, we see this progression. If you remember this slide, I tried to make the case that this idea of the Nephilim that goes all the way back to Genesis 6, who are the Nephilim? And I made the case that I link the Nephilim to a word that means fallen ones. And it's wrapped up, I think, in the fallenness of genetics. That Nephilim describe a concentrated group of those individuals who are in direct opposition to the divine agenda, and with the potential of being tall and giants. So, the Nephilim obviously come off the ark. It's part of the fallenness of human DNA, and now probably, see, I don't think I marked it here. What we see here is the connection of the next opponent, that is Goliath. He's connected to the Anakim. And if we look up in 1 Samuel 17, verse 4, 17 verse 4, then a champion came out of the armies of the Philistines named Goliath from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. And Joshua 11, if you remember, links remnants of the Nephilim to that part of the Philistine coastal area in the city of Gath in Joshua chapter 11, verse 22. There we go. There was no Anakim left in the land of the sons of Israel, only in Gaza and in Gath and in Ashdod some of them remained. So part of the unconquered people groups in along those Philistine coastal cities are the Anakim, and they're there, and that guess who comes from Gath, right? Goliath. So I think Goliath is standing in opposition as a single member of the Nephilim and in opposition to the divine agenda. So that's what we have going on here, just as a way of a reminder. So that's the way it all connects there. But we see him here, pictured here. And the reason I make that as a kind of a significant point is that where Israel has had so many different encounters with the Nephilim. Remember that they're in I'm having a senior moment. The fork in the road for Israel before entering the promised land at the Kadesh Oasis. They fail because of the intimidation. They recognize that there's the tall in the land, you know. They come back with a bad spy report. And so the Nephilim are there to intimidate and try to thwart the divine agenda for that time. And they're still hanging around, and here comes one, and the Nephilim are still active and alive and well. So what we have now is one who's stepping into the scene, King David, and he's already been anointed, not officially by the people, but divinely anointed. So he's going to step into the scene and take on the problem of the Nephilim. Let's take a look at 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 13. So we see the authentication of David as king first comes from the Lord. That's the most important thing. And we saw that in verse 13. So that's the Spirit of the Lord coming mightily upon David from that day forward. And it's helpful to think about the battle with Goliath as a means of further authenticating David as king. And in contrast to Saul. So we're going to have this beginning of this period from this point on where Saul will be on the decline, and David will be on the rise. So there's going to be this for the rest of the history. We're going to see this phenomena take place as David continues to authenticate himself as king. While he's spiritual king, Saul is, you might say, still, for at least for a time, the political king. But let's take a look at 1 Samuel 17, verses 4 through 7. And let's see, have Tamara, could you read for us? Chapter 17, verses 4 through 7.
Then a champion came out from the armies of the Philistines named Goliath from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was clothed with scale armor which weighed 5,000 shekels of bronze. He also had bronze greaves on his legs and a bronze javelin slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and the head of his spear weighed 600 shekels of iron. His shield carrier also walked before him.
All right. So yeah, that could have been just as well part of the spy report that came back from the spies who spied out the promised land from Kadesh Barnea. Yeah, they're big, they're intimidating, they're well equipped, well armored, and there's no way for us to take this take this day, win the battle, you know. Of course, there's somebody who has his theology correct. We see this ranting from Goliath and the details, and take a look at verse 12. Keep reading.
Now David was the son of Ephrathite of Bethlehem in Judah, whose name was Jesse. And he had 8 sons, and Jesse was old in the days of Saul, advanced in years among men. The 3 older sons of Jesse had gone after Saul to the battle, and the names of his 3 sons who went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and the second to him was Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest. Now the 3 oldest followed Saul. But David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's flock at Bethlehem. The Philistine came forward morning and evening for 40 days and took his stand.
Okay, let's just pause there. So, look down in verse 17, chapter 17, verse 8 through 10, 43 through. Okay, I've got myself a little discombobulated here, which is okay. So David's going to, notice in this little section how many references we have to David, the son of the Ephrathite of Bethlehem. You've got the reference to Bethlehem. So I think there's a little bit of the significance of Bethlehem coming through here. And what we've got here is the, let's see. Okay, let's move on here. So in chapter 17, let's look at chapter 17, verses 10 through. Did we read verse 10? Not yet. Okay, that's what I was kind of losing track of. So. Again the Philistines said, I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. The question of Goliath, I guess what I was wanting to get at was interesting. He's asking for a man, maybe asking for a king to come on the scene. I mean, who is it that's got the right spiritual preparation and upbringing and is ready and has the right correct theological position, you might say, to win the day here, coming. But there's, from the Philistine giant, his defiance is that there's no one. Where is Saul? Where he's not even he's not on. So all of this is going on. All right, so let's take a look at verse 12. Yeah, so verse 12, you already read it, but the word there might say, now David was the son of the Ephrathite of Bethlehem. That's one of those big buts of the Bible right there in verse 12. But David. So in contrast to the words, the idea of asking for a man, but David. David's just not a man, he's just a boy, but David. He happens to be from Bethlehem. And that seems to be pretty significant here in this text. He's from the household of Jesse, which seems to be pretty significant in this text. He's not just any old young boy. He's from a particular town and from a particular household. And this idea of this small town preparation, he's the byproduct of a group of the faithful remnant, I would say. What does it mean to be a Bethlehemite? Well, it means something. I guess that's my point. He'd learned his theology growing up from a faithful remnant. Mom, dad, community, all working together, a spiritual heritage. And he had some of these. Any of you ever grown up on a farm? You got some big ones of these? If you're the youngest, and you got big brothers who are the tall ones, yeah, you're going to learn a few things about fighting and defending yourself and being wise and smart when you're encountering someone who's in opposition to you. And And verse 15 here gives us a little bit of the details about what was it like in Bethlehem growing up. Well, he tended his father's flocks at Bethlehem, which means he was also battling some of these things. You know? David knew how to fight. He grew up knowing how to fight, and I just wanted to show you a little bit of the background here. I'm going to try to play one of my in-class video clips and see if we can get this to work.
He chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, and with his sling in his hand,
It's not programmed if you use for some reason.
now we have a sling and a stone like the one David himself would have held. We can test this weapon's capabilities. Louis Bartlett,
Do anything about that?
champion of the Balearic Islands,
It's not plugged in when you're letting it to the
greatest slingers.
You know how to fix that? Don't worry about it. Sorry about the sound. So this guy's one of the best slingshot, stone and slingshot guys in the world. There's the Goliath target. So it's going to measure force that comes, or in terms of energy, from the impact of that stone.
Just how much force would have hit Goliath's skull. So for a missile the size and shape of a sling bolt, how much force needs to be exerted in order to kill? If we're talking about how much force is necessary to kill somebody by an impact to the brain, anything over 3,000 newtons spread over an area of 30 millimeters squared is enough to kill a human being. A shockwave goes through the brain and causes the brain to strike the inside of the brain case, irreversibly damaging the brain tissue to such an extent that it couldn't work again. 3,000 newtons or 3 kilonewtons is equivalent to the force necessary to smash a concrete block in half.
Smashing a concrete block in half is how much force?
Equivalent to the only area of Goliath's forehead that was not protected by armor.
So here he is, taking a stab. And he hits it and knocks it off. So they measure enough force there that's it's over and well above the amount of in terms of the measuring of the impact to do significant damage, instantly kill Goliath. So that's just a little scientific background there. But if we go back to the text here, I want to look at chapter 17 and some of the details here. There's a little important exchange between David and Saul. When the words which David spoke were heard, they told them to Saul, and he sent for him. David says to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail on account of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine." Saul says to David, "You're not able to go against the Philistine to fight with them, for you are but a youth. You're short, I'm tall." While he has been a warrior from his youth, but David said to Saul, "I've had some preparation, I've had some training. I'm from Bethlehem. Your servant was tending his father's sheep when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb from the flock. I went out after him, tacked him, and rescued it from his mouth. And when he rose up against me, I seized him by his beard and struck him and killed him. Your servant has killed both lion and the bear, but this uncircumcised Philistine, he's just going to be just like one of them, since he's taunted the armies of the living God." And David has this theology right in verse 37. The Lord who delivered me from the paw, I love that, the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And then Saul says to David, go, and may the force be with you. That's why I have this next slide. It's kind of like, okay, David's going to be our good luck charm today. We'll send him out. I don't really care if he comes back in one piece, but maybe he's got a beeline to the Lord, and that'll guarantee a victory today. So it's interesting what Saul's thinking here. It's almost like what we saw with the Judges chapter 17, when we had the roaming Levite come along, and we having him set up a authorized pagan worship center, and we'll just bring Yahweh in, and that'll make it even more better, So it's a little odd what Saul is doing here. I don't want to play this video clip, I don't think, if the sound's not working, but I'll just describe it. But I think what we have here is, we've got this long-standing battle. I guess that's my point. We talked about it going back to the very beginning in the fall, how the Lord responds, the promised seed from the woman who will come and battle and take on the pagan threat. And really what happens here, and what paganism does, is that, and what Shirley MacLaine here would so graphically illustrate in the famous scene from the movie, Out on a Limb. She stands on the beach and looks out over the ocean, and she puts her hands in the air and she says, I am God, I am God. This is the idea of the dethronement of God as king, when we take on the throne, we take over the throne, and when we put ourselves in control, when we're the ones that do whatever is right in our own eyes. So we're coming out of this this period, this 400-year period in rebellion, and David is like acting now. He's taking on the Philistine giant, but eventually will be the one to bring back some spiritual sanity, right, to the situation with regards to this. So this battle, this Philistine David versus Goliath battle, is just a kind of a mini version, a micro version of the bigger picture. We don't want to lose track of that. The Philistines are just one pagan people group around. And we see that in the details of chapter 17, the taunting in verse 43. Let's pick up there. And the Philistine Goliath says to David, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods, little g gods, but David knows the God, the one true God, the king. Philistine also said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the sky and the beasts of the field. Then David said to the Philistine, you come to me with sword, spear, and javelin. I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the Lord of armies, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you've taunted. This day the Lord will deliver you up into my hands. I will strike you down and remove your head from you. And I will give the dead bodies of the army of the Philistines this day to the birds of the sky and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord does not deliver by sword or spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. And I think I want to make the case one more time that kind of theological foundation just doesn't come out of the air. This is Bethlehem and the supportive community, the faithful remnant that produced David speaking through here. This is where David is saying, I learned a few things. Every day I went out to take care of the family flocks, and I learned a few things every time I came home and said the family, sat around and had the family devotion or whatever. That kind of preparation, the combination of all of the preparation was what produced David for this time. So let's do this. Let's take a short 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and finish up the morning.